What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound, brought to you by the Hockey News. I'm your host, Emma Lingan. I am joined today by Michael Augello and Stefano Rubino of the Hockey News. We've got lots to talk about today around the NHL before we're about to go quiet for a couple days. Little holiday freeze coming up. But first, do want to remind you that for over 75 years, the Hockey News has been the ultimate hockey fix. Now you can get 12 issues delivered straight to you, packed with stories, stats, and a bonus gift issue to kick things off. Head over to thn.com and get in on the action. All right, less than cheerful topic, I guess, to start off with this week. The Toronto Maple Leafs, obviously in the basement of the Atlantic Division. They're 4-4-2 in their last 10 games. They ended up making a change behind the bench. Not Craig Berube, though. In the midst of one of their lowest points of the season, the Leafs have fired assistant coach Marc Savard. So one of Savard's main duties as an assistant coach was to direct the Maple Leafs power play, which is probably not coincidentally last in the league at 13.3%. So the Leafs, of course, hired Savard just last year, June 2024, when they brought in Berube as the head coach. Power play was ninth best in the league last season and near the top of the league before he even joined the team. So, Mike, what do you think of this move? Do you think it's really going to change much, firing an assistant coach? And do you think it will provide a boost, really a sustainable boost to the Leafs offense in any way?
No, this is a sacrifice to the hockey gods. I think this was a weak half measure move. I think obviously the fan base has been calling for Craig Berube's dismissal. Brad Treliving came out this morning and said that he's fully supportive of Craig. I don't know whether it has to do with the fact he's got 2 more years left in his contract, or they think that the problems are more than just the coaching. I mean, I don't think Craig Berube is a bad coach. Right now, the team is just playing terribly. The power play is abysmal. It has been abysmal before they went to the 5-forward power play last year with Mitch Marner, and this year without Marner, it has been terrible. They've only scored 12 power play goals, and they've given up 4 shorthanded goals, so they're +8 on the power play in 90 chances. That's pathetic. Now, does that mean that Marc Savard deserved to be fired? Yes, but I don't think the problem is just Marc Savard. It is a completely underachieving roster, a coach that seems to be at his wit's end, and a general manager who has not made a move to improve the team, even though he says since last summer he's been trying to make a move to improve the team. So it's a tire fire in Southern Ontario, and they're hoping that firing Marc Savard changes that.
On that uplifting note, Stefano, do you agree with Mike here that firing an assistant coach is probably not going to make much of a difference with this underperforming team?
I can't say anything else that Michael hasn't already said. I think he's a sacrifice that when it comes to easiest, you can't trade any of your top guys. Berube's not making any changes to that top power play, despite the results that they're showing at a visible 13% on the power play. And yeah, you don't want to pay another coach if you get rid of Berube. So it's someone that maybe we see a bump. They said they're going internal when it comes to making another coach change, but is that going to be what changes them from being last in the division to going all the way to the top?
Yeah, I would imagine probably not. Again, Leafs are in last place in their division right now. Really underwhelming performance, to say the least, from this team starting off this season. Another bottom dweller in the league. Let's head over to Seattle. So the Kraken announced that defenseman Brandon Montour has been placed on IR. He was placed there on Monday. He'll be out at least 4 weeks. He had hand surgery, so he'll be out for a minimum of 4 weeks. So the Kraken, of course, sitting at the bottom of the Pacific Division. They traded away Mason Marchment over the weekend, and they're now losing one of their top 2 defensemen for over a month. So, Mike, do you think that the Kraken could be looking to offload more of their veteran players, or was Marchment kind of just a one-off move?
We talked about it during the summer that Jason Botterill better invest in the extra minutes plan for his cell phone, because if they did go bad early in the season or even at the midway point, which we're at right now, he at that point had 5 unrestricted free agents, now 4 after trading Marchment. And you would think that, Jaden Schwartz, Jordan Eberle, Ilya Tolvanen, probably Jamie Alexiak, most of all, big, tough defensemen, well, all on expiring contracts. And you've heard stuff about Jared McCann, too. I wouldn't be surprised that, like, rumors about Vince Dunn. I mean, they have a lot of players that I think could be moved. It's just a question of how many they will move. And I think one of the reasons they've underachieved so far this year is because their young players like Shane Wright and Matty Beniers really haven't taken the step forward that they expected. So it's not the fault of the veterans, but Botterill has to, do some asset management. And if he can't get these guys signed, or if he doesn't want to sign them, he's got to move them before the deadline and get something for them.
Well, and you're right, Mike. We did talk about this over the summer, that it was a little unclear what exactly the plan was here in Seattle. It looked like they were maybe headed for a rebuild, but then they signed a bunch of veteran players, including Marchment, who they've already flipped. So it's a little unclear what the situation is there. I mean, Stefano, how do you see the Seattle team moving forward with the way things are now?
I don't know how you don't just talk to, like Michael said, Eberle, Schwartz, and obviously they have some protections on the trade clauses, so you're going to need to talk about them. But you look at this year's draft, they already have 2 draft picks. One, their own, is going to be a lottery. One from Tampa, which is doing better. But if you can move some of these guys and say, hey, it's on your last day of your deal, we can try moving you to a cup contender and get another first this year. They have no second-round picks this year in a draft that many scouts are saying is going to be generational, especially those top-heavy 1 to 10. So if you can afford to move some of these guys for your future, I think you have to.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's much choice left in Seattle for them to go in the other direction. Stefano, I want to stick with you here because since we have you on, I want to talk about the Avalanche. Obviously, we've been talking about 2 underperforming teams to start the show, and the Avalanche are very much not that. Of course, they have been rolling through the rest of the NHL. They've still only got 2 regulation losses in their first 35 games of the season, which is still just mind-boggling to me. I mean, with everything that seems to be going so smoothly, everything seems to be going right for the Avs right now. When you look at this team, do you think, at some point maybe the wheels are going to fall off here? Are there any areas of concern that you have with the way that their roster is currently constructed that you could see them improving on? Because I think before we would have all said, oh, goaltending, clearly not a problem now. So what do you see as, a potential area for concern here?
Myself and site editor Ryan O'Hara spoke about is, do they need to make changes for the sake of making changes, or is it because everyone else in the division is making changes? We saw the Quinn Hughes trade, Minnesota's bolstered. We don't doubt Dallas is going to make out some move with their cap space now. So I personally, and myself and O'Hara, thinking that it might be a bottom 6 change. Try and move Jack Drury down to the 4C and try and fill up that 3C that has proven in history in that 2022 Cup run has been pivotal. Is it we bringing back Nazem Kadri? Is the Flames making about it? Ryan talked about maybe Ryan O'Reilly. Are the Preds willing to sell him on it? So I think Chris McFarland has to do a really tough job of gauging the market and making sure this team that's performing really well can afford to make that next step push without giving up too much, I believe.
Nazem Kadri, one of your favorite topics, Mike. Do you see this? Do you see that potentially being a move that the Avs could make, or are there any other areas of potential concern on this roster where it seems like everything is going right now?
Well, that would be hilarious if they went and traded for Nazem Kadri after he left via free agency to Calgary. And also talk about life as a circle. Ryan O'Reilly signed an offer sheet to go to Calgary and then got traded to Buffalo, and that started his odyssey through the NHL. I looked at you have to be careful in terms of this team. 2 regulation losses. They're obviously doing something right. It's like you look at the Florida Panthers. Oh, they won 2 Stanley Cups, but their jerseys are ugly. I mean, you don't mess with success. Yeah. I think what they would have. I think the best move for them to do would be probably to add a bottom 6, probably a 3rd line winger, because if somebody gets hurt in the top 6, you need somebody. I don't think Victor Olofsson's a great enough move up into the top 6 if somebody gets hurt. You have to always guard against the Landeskog re-injury. their defense is 5 deep. I think that, Brent Burns on the bottom pairing has really helped them out, and their goaltending is good. So if I was going to say go after one thing, it would probably be a third line winger.
Well, like you said, don't mess with success, right? For right now, it seems like everything is going pretty great in Colorado, so don't expect to see a ton of changes there. Switching gears here a little bit, Thomas Chabot returned to the Ottawa Senators lineup over the weekend. He suited up for both of their back-to-back wins after missing 12 games with an upper body injury. So he played over 26 minutes in his return. That was against Chicago, registered an assist in that game, followed it up with an assist and a +3 rating in just under 23 minutes of ice time against Boston. So when the Senators are at full strength, now that they've gotten Chabot back, Mike, do you think that Ottawa has a good enough defense core that can get them beyond the first round of the playoffs this season? Because that's something that's been a concern with this team.
Yeah, their defensive core is better, obviously, with the ascent of Jake Sanderson to being a top pairing defenseman. I don't like the depth on the blue line. I mean, they've improved a little bit. Tyler Clevin, who actually got hurt recently, but is going to be back in the lineup after the Christmas break. He's been a nice addition as a big sort of defensive-minded guy, and Artem Zub is pretty decent as a sort of mid-pairing guy. But the depth on the blue line I don't think is good enough, and I think that's something that Steve Staios probably would want to address if he thinks that they're going to be in the playoff race. That along with Ullmark playing better because his save percentage is under 900. I think they need to bolster the blue line a little bit and hopefully get Ullmark to play better in the second half.
Stefano, what do you think? Do you think the Senators have done enough to improve their offense? As Mike said, they've improved marginally, but is it going to be enough to maybe get them past the first round in a potential playoff run?
I think this is going to be an interesting stretch we're going to see now that the team is now fully healthy. Brady Tkachuk now back, Thomas Chabot now back, 6-4-0 in their last 10 for 4-game winning streak right now. The Atlantic is really open, and if they can capitalize on a hot streak, and like Michael said, try and gauge the market, see if they can bolster that blue line, try and get some bottom six depth. They took the Leafs to last round in the Battle of Ontario. It was fun, but obviously that Leafs team is not the Leafs team this year. So if they can capitalize on a hot streak, and with the division really being up in the air right now, I wouldn't be surprised if they make a bye and go on a run.
Yeah, definitely shaking things up with the Leafs being where they are right now. It will be really interesting to see how that all plays out. Of course, Senators just gaining a player back in Chabot. Unfortunately, the Carolina Hurricanes have lost a player, a very important player from their roster, and that is Seth Jarvis. So he's listed now as week to week after crashing hard into the post against the Florida Panthers during overtime on Friday. So Jarvis, of course, one of the best goal scoring pace of his career before he got injured. He was leading Carolina with 19 goals in 34 games. Many were surprised actually that Evan Rodriguez wasn't penalized on the play that led to Jarvis's injury. And Jarvis obviously being out, of course, is going to be huge for not only Carolina, but potentially for Olympic consideration. I know when the Hurricanes were in Nashville, Team Canada GM Jim Nill was there specifically to watch Seth Jarvis. So definitely a big blow for him and for those teams. But again, on that play from Rodriguez, Mike, what did you think of the play? Do you think that Rodriguez should have been penalized? And, I know you always have lots of thoughts about controversial plays when they go down like this. And then, in the meantime, who's going to have to step up in Jarvis's absence?
I mean, at the absolute minimum, I thought when we were looking over and preparing to talk about this, you were talking about him not being suspended. He didn't get a minor penalty for this. It was absolutely ridiculous. Now, Jarvis was cutting to the net. He was at full speed, and Rodriguez sort of chopped and tripped him. It wasn't a baseball swing. It wasn't like he was chopping wood, but it was a penalty, and they didn't even call that. Yeah. I think the problem here in the NHL, and the problem I have with the Department of Player Safety, when a player is in a vulnerable spot like Mikko Rantanen did with Romanov from the Islanders, or what he just did with Matt Coronado and rubbed him up against the board, where the player is vulnerable, that's where you have to take into consideration whether the offending player is suspendable. And in my eyes, Evan Rodriguez should be suspended because he knew what he was doing. He was cutting the legs out of Jarvis, and he was going at full speed. What was he going to do? Hit the goalie? No, he was going to hit the post. And that's what happened. And now Jarvis could be out for the Olympics. We don't know. They said week to week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be a loss for Canada. But Canada has a deep well of forwards that they can tap into if he can't.
Well, Stefano, what do you think? Are you in agreement on the play and the punishment that there should have been or should not have been? And then forget the Olympics. I mean, who on the Hurricanes roster is going to need to step up in Jarvis's absence?
Quickly, it should have been a penalty. That's the shocking what it wasn't even just a 2-minute minor. Clear as cut day. Replay showed it. Both hands on the stick directly to his right leg. But for me, it's got to be Nicholas Ehlers. This is a guy that many going into this offseason deemed as one of the biggest free agents to get this year, and he has not proved. Jackson Blake in his, I believe, second year has been amazing. Andrei Svechnikov, after a cold start, has really beginning to shine again. And Ehlers, I think, needs to really show his value when it comes to that contract that he got this offseason. And if Carolina wants to stay where they are, because, again, Metropolitan, just like the Atlantic, is really open. He's got to be the one that steps up until we get some sort of information on when Jarvis is back.
Well, speaking of the Metropolitan Division being wide open, the New Jersey Devils got Jack Hughes back. Of course, he missed 18 games due to a hand injury that he had sustained at a team dinner back in November. Of course, Hughes picked up a goal in the Devils' loss to the Buffalo Sabres, still leads the team with 11 goals, despite the fact that he missed that much time. The Devils are now 12-5-1 with Hughes in the lineup this season. They're 8-11-0 without him. So again, we're talking about the Metro Division, how wide open it is. With Hughes back, Mike, do you think the Devils can now compete for the top spot in the Metro?
Well, they have some catching up to do. They're 6 points behind first place in the division. They're in the second wild card right now. And as you said, they're a completely different team without Hughes than with him. I mean, you're allowed to have that 1-2 punch with him and Nico Hischier on two separate lines, and that's lethal. I mean, they came into Buffalo without Hughes and won. This is before the Sabres all of a sudden decided they could start winning. I think it's going to be tough for them they'll definitely get into the top three if Hughes can stay healthy. But in terms of challenging for first place, I mean, 6 points, it's tough to catch up that much in half a season. So they're going to need some luck, but I definitely think they'll be top three in the Metro.
Stefano, what do you think?
I agree. Like what you said, this is a completely different team when Jack was healthy, and that shows in the beginning of the season when he was on a really hot goal scoring pace. It's how can this team, again, once gel, that when Jack is back, can Markstrom continue his impressive play? And do you trust the Islanders, the Capitals, or the Philadelphia Flyers to continue their hot play? Again, the teams ahead of them. We know the Carolina Hurricanes are going to be someone that's going to always be competing for that top spot, but are we going to see if the Flyers and their little hot streak, does that end? Is the Islanders hot streak, does they end? So it's going to be a good waiting game to see how it pulls out through the future.
Definitely. Heading back over to the Atlantic here, Tampa Bay, of course, they've lost Victor Hedman from the lineup long term. But in the meantime, Darren Raddysh has actually taken on a larger role with the team at even strength and on the power play, because Victor Hedman's the kind of guy who you don't just replace one for one, but Raddysh has done a very solid job there. He's shown some offensive skill. He's got 24 points in 29 games so far this season. Now, he's just 29 years old. He's on the last year of his contract, and he's at a bargain. He's only making $975,000 this season. So, Mike, do you think after this, after seeing what he can do, that the Lightning are going to hang on to Raddysh beyond this season? And whether they do or not, wherever his next contract is, how big of a raise do you think he's going to get?
Well, he's a right shot defenseman, which we know that immediately boosts his salary and a number of teams will be interested in him because he's right-handed. I mean, his story is fantastic because he wasn't drafted. He was a 5-year OHL player with Erie. He was signed by the Rangers. He was signed by the Blackhawks. Both of them, essentially let him go. Then he goes to Syracuse. He gets called up, and now he had 37 points last year, and he's on pace right now for probably 50 to 55 points. He's going to hit it big in free agency, and he's never made a lot of money in this league. This is his opportunity with the cap going up. So I don't know how a cap-strapped Tampa Bay team, even if the cap is going up, is going to be able to sign him. He's going to be this year's Nick Perbix. He will go out there and probably get $4 million, $4.5 million a year.
Yeah, those right shot defensemen definitely come at a high asking price. Stefano, where do you see Raddysh staying in Tampa? Going to be difficult again with the cap constraints, but also what kind of contract do you see him signing?
I agree in the 3 to 4 million. It's going to be, like you guys said, hard to stay with Tampa. A lot of their cap and a lot of their core players are locked up on no moves or permanent move clauses. Cernak's making 5, McDonough's making 6, Hedman's making 8. So yeah, is Darren making 4 the worst? No. Is the cap going up definitely going to help? Yes. But again, this is a team that is getting older, is a team that needs to win now. So I don't doubt if they bring him back, but there's going to be a lot of teams saying, hey, if I can get him 3 to 4 million, like Michael said, in a lesser role that might come with even more help, more opportunity, and more growth, I wouldn't be shocked if we see that happen this offseason.
Well, Emma, I mean, the thing that's the reality here is if you look at the free agent pool next summer, it's barren. I mean, at forward, the number 1 is Artemi Panarin, and he's 34 years old, and the number 2 is Alex Tuck. So you're talking about a very thin forward group, and defensively, I think it's about the same. So, it's nice to be an unrestricted free agent going into next summer because the cap is going up and the pool is shallow. And even if general managers are, let's say determined to keep prices down, they're not going to be able to control themselves when the few guys out there that are out there, they're going to bid them up. That's just the reality of what's going to happen.
Especially in a world where the salary cap is going up. I mean, this is all uncharted territory right now. So going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. Of course, a lot of the big name free agents, unrestricted free agents or pending unrestricted free agents have already come off the board. A lot of them have already re-signed, but there's still some guys who are going to be looking for new contracts next year. And of course, restricted free agents fall into that category. One of those very interesting name to keep an eye on is Adam Fantilli. He was drafted 3rd overall by the Columbus Blue Jackets in 2023. Of course, he came after Connor Bedard and Leo Carlson. So while he hasn't put up quite the same dominant offensive numbers like those two guys have this year, Fantilli's still on pace to have his 2nd straight 50-point season with the Blue Jackets. So he, as I mentioned, is going to be an RFA this summer. Looking at what he's done and his role in Columbus, Mike, do you think he ends up signing a long-term deal or a short-term deal with the Blue Jackets?
I think the Blue Jackets would probably want to get him signed long-term because the reality here is it's tough to get players to come to Columbus. It's just, we know that Johnny Gaudreau did, and nobody expected that to happen. They've locked up defensemen and forwards in the past, but they don't stay there long. Zach Werenski is going to be a concern. Well, he's got 2 more years left after this year, and they're going to have to worry about him when that comes to pass. I mean, Fantilli scored 31 goals last year. And I mean, unlike Leo Carlson and Connor Bedard, who the general managers of those teams will basically go to them and say, how long do you want to sign? Because we want to sign you. It doesn't matter what, you're center, all 3 of them are centers. But I think Bedard, because of the rookie year and the year that he's having this year, he can basically write his own ticket, write his own amount, write his own term. Carlson's probably pretty much the same. I don't think that Fantilli is going to get that option, but I do think Columbus, because of the realities of where that team is at, they're going to want to get him locked up as long as possible.
Stefano, what do you think? Do you agree with that?
I do. And this is going to be a last year that really get determined, because I think this is the last year that he can get that 8-year extension, and this is also the tough part of where do we want to give him that 8-year extension? Because if we give him a 4-year pivot, he can outperform those 4 years. And obviously, as a player, you're still going to get that max 7-year extension. But if you're a GM that wants to build towards his future, like Mike said, keeping your core in Columbus, making sure you have the guys to build around, you get him at 8 years and, 23 points in 36 games. He's not on the best pace he was, say, last year when he finished with 31 goals. But if he can have a bounce back season in the second half and, again, finish around 30, you lock him up for those 8 years at a good AAV, and he can be that consistent 30-goal scorer. I don't see how you don't do that if you're in Columbus.
And the reality here with Columbus, they made the Mason Marchment trade a couple days ago. They were last in the Eastern Conference when they made that deal. Obviously, to Don Waddell, it's important that this team have second-half success and challenge for a playoff spot, because if they don't and they're perceived as being, bottom dwellers in the Eastern Conference, it's going to make it even less attractive for free agents to go there. I should know. I cover the Buffalo Sabres, and it's almost impossible to get free agents to come to Buffalo. Maybe that changes with Jarmo Kekalainen, but over the last few years, it's been impossible to get free agents to come to Buffalo, and Columbus is very similar.
And no palm trees in Buffalo or Columbus, right? That's the line. Of course, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, Columbus, they took a big step forward last year, got very close to playoff contention, didn't quite get there, but it was kind of viewed as a team on the rise. Of course, Zach Werenski had the year of his life, and it looked like they were on the up and up. Of course, now seems to have fallen back a little bit. So we'll see what happens. But again, I think Don Waddell is being aggressive, like you said. And so we're going to see what they do in the second half. Of course, if you want to read any more about the Columbus Blue Jackets or the Buffalo Sabres or any of the other teams that we've discussed today, of course, head over to the Hockey News. Of course, the Hockey News has been the go-to for all things hockey since 1947. 12 issues packed with game and player insights, plus a free issue to start is a must-have for any fan. Head to thn.com/free and grab your subscription today. That's going to do it for today's episode of The Wraparound. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us and listened to us talking some hockey today. We do appreciate it. We will be back with an all-new special holiday-themed episode on Thursday. For Michael Augello and Stefano Rubino, I'm Emma Lingan. This is The Wraparound, and we'll see you next time.